Welcome to Yehoshua's Daf Yomi Shiur, where the Daf continues daily until the complete revelation of Mashiach ben David, Messiah the son of David. We are studying Tractate Chullin, and we are on page 120. Top of the page, starting with 120a, Amasnisin. The first word on the page, top, very top. Amasnisin. Maintaining that the dispute is with regard to that which is taught in the Mishnah, the attached hide and the congealed gravy attached to the meat and the spices and the meat residue and the bones and the tendons and the horns and the hooves, all joined together with the meat to constitute the requisite egg bulk to impart the impurity of food. Reish Lakish said the sages taught that only a bone and the other items mentioned in the Mishnah joined together with the meat to constitute the requisite measure to impart impurity because they constitute protection for the meat. But a hair does not join together with the meat to constitute the requisite measure to impart impurity because it is not for protection for the meat. And Rabbi Yochanan said even a hair is protection for the meat, and therefore it joins together with the meat to constitute the requisite measure to impart impurity. Reish Lakish said to Rabbi Yochanan, but the hide protects the flesh, and the hair is on top of the hide. Is the halacha of protection applicable with regard to protection that is on top of another protection? Rabbi Yochanan answered, the hair penetrates through the hide and touches the flesh, thereby providing protection directly for the flesh. Rabbi Acha objects to this answer, and he says that if that is so, that there are perforations in the hide through which the hairs penetrate, how can we write phylacteries? Don't we require phylacteries to be written with a perfect writing with no perforations in the letters? And that is not possible if there are perforations in the hide. I guess they're arguing about something that's biology. I mean, it's something that you can verify. I don't know. It depends how big the holes are considered holes. Maybe they're tiny, so maybe it's not a perforation. Who knows? Ish mitite hadiam rimara v'kol The Gemara answers that halacha, which they say in the West, in Israel, escapes Rav Acha. Any perforation over which the ink passes and which covers is not considered perforation, and then it invalidates the writing. So they're saying this, what I was suggesting, that these holes are so small that the letters can go over it, and the letter is just fine. It covers everything, so it's not considered even a hole. And these holes for the hairs are like almost microscopic. I mean, they're so small that you can't even see them. Eis Rabbi Yochanan. Reish Lakish, or Shish Lukazayis Basa Benagia, Agia Betzivio Timano Vesal Kenegdo Tame. My love, Mishum Shomer? No, Mishum Yad. Rabbi Yochanan raised an objection to the opinion of Reish Lakish, opinion from the Mishnah taught later in 124a. In the case of the hide of an animal carcass upon which there is an olive bulk of flesh, one who touches a strand of flesh emerging from the flesh, or touches a hair that is on the side of the hide opposite the flesh, is ritually impure, even though he did not touch an olive bulk of the flesh. what is the reason that one who touches the strand of flesh or the hair becomes impure? Is it not because they constitute protection for the flesh? The Gemara answers no. It is because the hair constitutes a handle for the flesh. The Gemara asks, for what function is one hair fit such that it constitutes a handle? The Gemara answers, one can explain that the Mishnah, as Rabbi Elah said in explanation of a different Mishnah, it is stated with regard to the case of an on among many ons. Here too, the Mishnah is stated with regard to the case of a hair among many hairs and not the case of a single hair. The hair serves as a handle for the flesh because one can hold the hair and lift the flesh without the hair becoming detached. And where was the opinion of Rabbi Elah stated? It was stated with regard to that which we learned in a Mishnah. An on that is on top of a stalk can become impure and impart impurity, but it does not join together with the grains to constitute the requisite measure to impart impurity. It was asked, for what function is an on fit such that it is considered to be a handle for the stalk? Rabbi Elah said the Mishnah is stated with regard to the case of an on among many ons. The Mishnah teaches the gravy, rotiv, joins together with the meat to constitute the requisite egg bulk to impart the impurity of food, but an egg bulk of gravy itself is not susceptible to impurity. The Gemara asks, to what is the term rotif referring? Rava said, the term rotif is referring to the fat that floats on top of a soup of cooked meat. Amar le Abaye, hu atzmo yitma tumat ochlin, ela cherev de karish. Abaye said to Rava, that fat itself is eaten and is therefore susceptible to impurity of food. Rather, the term rotiv is referring to fat that oozed out of the meat and congealed. That fat is not eaten, but it does join together with the meat to constitute the requisite egg bulk to impart the impurity of food. Ma yirya karish kilo karish nami. The amar rish lakish. Tzir shagai gav yerek b'tzarek nechoteves. The Gemara asks, why is the Mishnah referring specifically to congealed fat? Even in a case where the fat did not congeal, it joins together with the meat to constitute the requisite egg bulk to impart the impurity of food. As Reish Lakish said, brine on a vegetable, even though it is liquid, combines with the vegetable to constitute a large date bulk with regard to rendering one liable for violating the prohibition against eating on Yom Kippur. Similarly, liquid fat should combine with the meat to constitute the requisite volume to impart the impurity of food. The Gemara answers, liquids and solids do not join together to constitute the requisite egg bulk to impart the impurity of food. The reason for the halacha there with regard to Yom Kippur is because one is liable even for the consumption of a liquid that is not characterized as food if the mind of the one who consumed it is settled. This is because with regard to the fast of Yom Kippur, the Torah is concerned with a person's affliction, as the verse states, you shall afflict your souls, Leviticus 23:27. Therefore, one is liable on Yom Kippur for any eating that settles his mind. But that is not the case here with regard to impurity. For two substances to join together to impart impurity, a combination between substances that have a common requisite measure for imparting impurity is necessary. Liquid and solid foods do not have the same requisite measure. Therefore, if the fat is congealed, it joins together with the meat. If it is not congealed, it does not join together with the meat. The Mishnah teaches the spices join together with the meat to constitute the requisite egg bulk to impart the impurity of food, but an egg bulk of kifa itself is not susceptible to impurity. The Gemara asks, to what is the term kifa referring? Rabba said the term kifa is referring to a congealed hash of cooked meat that settled to the bottom of the pot. Amar le Abaye, what's my yitma to myself? Amar papa tavlin. Abaye said to Rabba, that hash itself is eaten and is therefore susceptible to the impurity of food. Rather, Rav Papa said the term kifa is referring to spices which are not eaten themselves but do join together with the meat to constitute the requisite egg bulk to impart the impurity of food. Since the Mishnah mentions kifa, which according to Rabba is referring to congealed substance, the Gemara discusses the halacha of one who congealed a forbidden substance and consumed it. We learned in the Brayta there, one who caused blood to coagulate and ate it, or melted forbidden fat and swallowed it, is liable. The Gemara objects, granted, one who caused blood to coagulate and ate it is liable, although blood is not normally eaten in such a manner. Since he caused the blood to coagulate, he ascribed the significance of food to it, and the Torah prohibits the eating of blood, as it is written, you shall eat neither fat nor blood, Leviticus 3:17. But why is one who melted forbidden fat and swallowed it liable? Eating and not drinking is stated in the Torah with regard to the prohibition against the consumption of forbidden fat, as it is written, you shall eat no fat of ox or sheep of goats, Leviticus 7:23. And this swallowing of liquid is not eating. Amar Reish Lakish, Amar Kro, Amar Reish Lakish, Amar Kro, ay 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 ay. Amar Reish Lakish, Amar Reish Lakish, ay 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 ay. Amar Kol Nefesh, Rabbi says as choice. He haki b'chamanami b'chamay seruchim yisarech. Reish Lakish said he becomes impure because the verse states in every soul. The term soul is interpreted homiletically to include one who drinks. The Gemara objects, if so, one who drinks a carcass that is melted in the sun, a carcass doesn't melt in the sun, should also become impure. The Gemara explains the carcass takes a long time to melt in the sun, therefore the liquid becomes rotten and unfit for consumption. But you can't drink a carcass. I don't get that one. Okay, anyway. Chametz lo eis minei shekein lo hoisa lo shata koshel levele lo eis li asi minei shekein anush koleis. The Gemara cited 3 instances in which Reish Lakish interpreted the term soul as including one who drinks. The Gemara explains all 3 mentions of the term soul are necessary, as if the merciful one had written the term soul only with regard to forbidden fat, liability for drinking liquefied leavened bread. What? There's no such thing. You can't liquefy leaven. Could it have been derived from it, since the prohibition against the consumption of forbidden fat has an element of stringency that does not apply to leavened bread, in that the forbidden fat had no period of fitness for consumption. Leavened bread, on the other hand, may be consumed before Passover. Likewise, impurity contracted by drinking liquefied carcass could not be derived from the halacha of forbidden fat, because the consumption of forbidden fat is punishable by karet, which is not the case with regards to the consumption of a carcass. And if the merciful one had written the term soul only with regard to leavened bread, liability for drinking melted forbidden fat could not be derived from it, as there are no circumstances in which the general prohibition against eating leavened bread was permitted. The consumption of forbidden fat, on the other hand, is permitted with regard to the fat of an undomesticated animal. And similarly, impurity contracted by drinking a liquefied carcass could not be derived from the halacha of leavened bread, because the halacha of leavened bread has an element of stringency that does not apply to a carcass in that its consumption is punishable by karet. And the merciful one had written, and if the merciful one had written the term soul only with regard to a carcass, those prohibitions against drinking melted fat and liquefied leavened bread could not be derived from it, because a carcass has an element of stringency that does not apply to those prohibitions in that it transmits impurity to one who eats it. Therefore, all three mentions of the term soul are necessary. Chada, the Gemara objects, it is true that one halacha, it is true that one halacha cannot be derived from either one of the others, as detailed above. Nevertheless, one can derive the halacha of one of them from the other two. The Gemara responds, this is not possible, as which halacha can one derive from the others? Let the merciful one not write this halacha with regard to a liquefied carcass and derive it from these other prohibitions. I'm just saying, my own question is that liquefied carcass doesn't exist. There's no such thing as a liquefied carcass. You cannot liquefy a carcass. Okay. You would need a tremendous heat, I think. And that doesn't come from the sun or whatever. It would burn probably first before it... Yeah, anyway. From these other prohibitions against eating forbidden fat and leavened bread, one can refute this derivation. What is notable about these other prohibitions? They are notable in that one who transgresses them is punished with karet, contrary to one who eats a carcass. Lo. The Gemara suggests, let the merciful one not write this halacha with regard to dissolved leavened bread and derive it from these halachot of forbidden fat and a carcass. The Gemara refutes the derivation. What is notable about these halachot? They are notable in that they had no period of fitness for consumption, as opposed to leavened bread, which was fit for consumption before Passover. The Gemara suggests, let the merciful one not write this halacha with regard to forbidden fat and derive it from these halachot of consuming leavened bread and a carcass. The Gemara refutes the derivation. What is notable about these halachot? They are notable in that there are no circumstances in which their general prohibition was permitted. Shall you say the same with regards to forbidden fat, as general prohibition was permitted in certain circumstances? Therefore, all three mentions of the term soul are necessary. The Gemara asks, and what is the case in which forbidden fat is permitted? If we say that it is the fat of a domesticated animal that is permitted to be sacrificed in the temple of the Most High, the bird carcass is permitted to be sacrificed in the temple, although pinching the nape of the neck of a bird renders it an unslaughtered carcass and forbidden for consumption. Bird offerings are sacrificed to the Most High in such a manner. And the reference is rather to the forbidden fat of an undomesticated animal, which is permitted to an ordinary person. One may respond that a carcass is also permitted for a person's consumption in a certain case, as the pinching of the nape of the neck of a bird, sin offering, renders it fit for consumption of the priests. The Gemara answers, actually, the reference is to the forbidden fat of an undomesticated animal, which is permitted to an ordinary person, and that which is difficult for you with regard to the fact that the priests eat the carcass of a bird, which is brought as a sin offering, is not difficult, as the priests receive their portion from the table of the Most High. Since this carcass is permitted as an offering to God, it is permitted to the priests as well. Therefore, this does not qualify as a case of an unslaughtered carcass permitted to ordinary people. The Gemara challenges, but that which is taught in the following practice is difficult. The Torah states with regard to the prohibition against eating creeping animals, these are they that are impure. To you among all the creeping animals, Leviticus 11:31, the sages interpret the letter Hey in the term hatmeim to forbid their juice that oozes from their carcasses, and their gravy that is produced when they are cooked, and sediments of their flesh that congeal at the bottom of the dish when cooked. The Gemara explains the challenge. Why do I need a verse to teach this halacha? Let the halacha be learned from these halachot of melted forbidden fat, a liquefied bird carcass, and dissolved leavened bread. Tzrichi. We need it. Gemara says it was necessary. The Gemara answers it was necessary for this halacha to be written as if the Merciful One had not written this halacha with regard to creeping animals, and instead the halacha was derived from the other halachot, I would say it is sufficient for the conclusion that emerges from a kal v'chomer inference to be like that of its source. Accordingly, just as there one who consumes melted forbidden fat, a liquefied carcass, or dissolved leavened bread is not liable until it consumes an olive oil, so too here, with regard to consuming the juice, gravy, and sediments of creeping animals, one is not liable until he consumes an olive oil. Therefore, a separate verse is necessary to teach that one is liable even for consuming a lentil bulk of the juice, gravy, or sediments of a creeping animal, just as one is liable for consuming this measure of the creeping animal itself. Okay, that concludes 128, and we'll pick it up on next Amud.